On January 16, 1980, Paul McCartney was arrested at Narita International Airport trying to smuggle nearly 8 ounces of high-potency Hawaiian cannabis into Japan.
I can see the guy opening my suitcase, and right on the top is this big bag of grass. And I didn't even put it in a sweater or hide it.
An eagle-eyed and eagle-nosed customs agent happened to notice the cartoonishly huge bag of weed near the top of Paul's suitcase, almost completely unhidden. McCartney was immediately detained, interrogated, and taken to the Tokyo Narcotics Detention Center, where he was placed in the general population as prisoner number 22. Paul had come to Japan with his band Wings for what would have been their 6th tour together. They were scheduled to play 11 gigs at venues in Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. But Paul's arrest forced them to cancel the tour before it even got started. His fans were again devastated. The Japanese wing of the Wings fan club collected thousands of signatures calling for McCartney's release. And some ticket buyers even refused refunds, choosing instead to go to the Budokan on the nights of the scheduled performances as a form of protest. The British vice consul visited McCartney inside the detention center and told him that he faced up to 7 years hard labor in a Tokyo prison, away from his young wife and family.
I was in the place called the Tokyo Detention Center, and it wasn't fun at all. After about a couple of days of terror, where I didn't know anything, you start to get a bit of an idea of it. And I got a little bit indoctrinated and it's like the Great Escape. You start to sort of play games and start to think, I've got to keep sane here.
I couldn't sleep for the first 3 days. It was 5 days before Linda was allowed to visit me, and I'd never spent a night apart from her since we'd married. It was pretty rough. Just a thin mattress on the floor. I had to wash using water from the toilet cistern. I had to share a bath with a bloke who was in for murder. I was afraid to take my suit off in case I got... But I'd seen all those prisoner of war movies, and I knew you had to keep your spirits up, so I'd organized sing-songs with the other prisoners.
If it had just been me, in a group or something, I don't think it would have been so bad. I took the wife and kids, like I always do. So Daddy got busted. Where's Daddy? It's gone away for the evening. So I was imagining Linda and the kids, a little house on the outskirts of Tokyo, the kids being brought up in Japanese schools.
Were you afraid they would set an example with you and actually put you in jail for 7 years?
Yeah, I was looking at my kids speaking Japanese and being brought up in Tokyo.
However, Paul has not always been so gloomy about his time inside. Here he tells a Japanese journalist just how much fun he had.
And I got good treatment. The Japanese people were really good, and the guards are in there. If any guards are watching, hello, man. Hi. Okay.
Okay, mate.
Yeah, they might be watching, some of my friends. But it was okay.
I've heard you sang a song with the prisoners, some numbers and outside fans. Did you very enjoy and?
Well, I didn't enjoy it, because I don't think anybody enjoys being in jail. But we had some good times. Yeah, and I liked the other prisoners, Miss Saisu and Fujimoto. Hi.
But maybe that's just Paul being diplomatic again. Either way, what isn't disputed is that Paul was a model inmate, got up early, did all of his chores quickly, eagerly, and even allegedly wrote a song with his fellow inmates. So there's hope, did he? Remember, marijuana was not as widely kind of accepted as it is today back then, especially not in Japan, where the current punishment for marijuana possession is still 7 years. And that's now. And Paul had stuck like a half pound of super weed, the most potent weed on the planet, into his daughter's winter coat in 1980.
And there is a story people have put to me that I was framed, which actually makes more sense to me as time goes on, but I don't think I was.
Now, almost immediately afterwards, rumors began to swirl that it was the evil sorceress Yoko Ono who had tipped off the Japanese feds as to the possibility of Paul carrying marijuana with him into Japan. This theory is popular online and in a few tell-alls from Beatles hangers-on. I wasn't the only one who believed that Paul was set up by Yoko Ono. Not only was Yoko Japanese, she was from an influential and very wealthy banking family. Paul and Linda and everyone in the inner circle believed that Yoko had informed the Japanese police that Paul was more than likely to have marijuana in his luggage, even though Paul had been quite outspoken about his use of cannabis, and even though he may have been naive about getting caught, I think there had been some Japanese politics involved. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a solid theory. Yoko Ono was famously both alive and Japanese at the time of Paul's arrest. She can't hide that. And it's also very likely that the Japanese government, who she probably has a direct line to, would listen to a very, very weird performance artist who does stuff like this. Still, others feel that it could have been Paul McCartney's 3 previous arrests for marijuana possession that really started the suspicion rolling. This theory gains a bit more credibility when we find out that Japan had already revoked Paul's visa once before for growing marijuana on his farm in Scotland, which is a different country. That's how much Japan hates weed. Another thing helping this theory along is the fact that that's what Japan said. Japan made Paul McCartney jump through years of hoops to get back into their country, including forcing him to sign an affidavit swearing that he no longer even smoked marijuana at all. Japan essentially dared McCartney to bring marijuana into their country, and he obliged.
We'd been told, whatever we did, don't take it into Japan. Very severe penalties. And we fully thought we weren't going to. That's fine, we won't take it in. But for some reason, and I still can't explain, I took some in. And rather a large amount. Well, no, in Japan we were warned. They said, look, whatever you do, don't take part in. They said, you know what it's like in America? It's kind of, sort of loose attitude.
Right.
Britain, a bit looser. Don't go into Japan with it. It's 7 years hard labor.
After almost 10 days of incarceration, the Tokyo district prosecutor decided to simply deport McCartney back to the UK without charge or conviction, determining that the extreme loss of tour income, along with the international shame of the incident as a whole, were punishment enough. Basically, everyone saw it as a diplomatic necessity. Japan didn't want to lock up one of the world's most popular musicians. England didn't want to lose one of its best guys.
Does this now mean that you're going to give up marijuana smoking?
It looks like it.
Still, I love that Paul McCartney, who's the cheeky Liverpudlian, tried to get his deportation flight rerouted to Holland so he could get some weed. I don't know if that's true. I want to believe it's true. McCartney lost millions of dollars on the canceled tour dates. He was forced to repay the promoters out of his own pocket. And the incident began a process that would ultimately lead to the end of his band Wings.
I suddenly didn't have to do the tour. It was almost as if I wanted to get busted.
In multiple interviews and on multiple occasions, Paul McCartney has admitted that he was to blame for this entire fiasco.
And the terrible thing was, it was just stupid. I had some stuff, and it was just arrogant. I just thought, you know what? They'll never boss me.
And he even suggests that he had like a subconscious wish that the Japanese authorities would catch him, arrest him, and put him in prison to get him out of doing the tour.
Tell you the truth, I really don't know to this day what made me do it.
I think that it might have been that. There might have been something to do with that because I was ready to get out of Wings. I think also, more importantly, we hadn't really rehearsed much for that tour, and I felt under-rehearsed. I cannot believe that I would have myself busted and put in jail 9 days just to get out of a group. I mean, let's face it, there are easier ways to do it than that. And also having to pay £1 million to the promoters in default, I think the only thing, it might have just been some deep psychological thing. It's a weird period for me. Now, I don't know if this is true. But the guy did bring half a pound of marijuana with him for a trip that was going to last about a week and a half.
And was it a lot of pot, or was it just...
It was way too much.
Really?
Honestly, I mean, and I got there, and I said, well, what's the thing? They said 7 years hard labor.
That would put him just over Wiz Khalifa on the pothead scale. And maybe Paul goes that hard. And maybe it was for the band, and maybe it was, too good to throw out, or it was just absent-minded, like rock star pothead behavior. And Paul McCartney has done other rock star pothead moves in his life. For example, this is not the only time he's been caught trying to smuggle drugs into a foreign country on vacation. On January 16th. That's right! Paul McCartney was arrested again on January 16th, 4 years later, for smuggling marijuana into Barbados.
Whatever you think and whatever you think I've done, this, I'm telling you, this substance, cannabis, is a whole lot less harmful than rum punch, whiskey, nicotine, and glue, all of which are perfectly legal.
He's right, There you go.
That time it was just like a small fine, not really a big deal. But getting arrested for drug smuggling on the same day, 4 years apart, is classic pothead maneuver. It really could have been an accident.
We were feeling like we'd done what we set out to do. and we're getting a little bit fed up of another lineup. Here we go, another dollar, another day. It started to just wind down the enthusiasm, I think.
But I think we should take McCartney at his word here. He was worried about the tour. He was worried about the band. He felt under-rehearsed. He didn't want to do those 11 shows. And maybe, you know, getting arrested gets him out of that obligation. And now Paul admits that this was a dumb move. You know, he lost a parent as a kid. He knows exactly the type of fear his kids were probably going through at the time.
I think I was just stupid, and I paid the penalty. Hey.
And Paul probably assumed that nothing was really going to happen to him, you know, because he's such a beloved guy. But he still risked it all to avoid tough conversations. To me, that is a perfect asshole move, meaning it is equal parts selfish and careless. The stupidity of it enhanced how selfish it seemed, and how selfish it was enhanced how stupid it was. Not only was he terrifying his family, but he was also, again, terrifying his fans. But aside from that, the fallout fell mostly on McCartney himself in the form of embarrassment, and the embarrassment McCartney suffered was equal to the selfishness of taking a small forest of marijuana into Japan. This wasn't a nebulous series of events where there were multiple different people at fault in different ways. This was all Paul's fault, and so he gets all the blame. To me, that is a perfect asshole move, meaning it is equal parts selfish and careless. The selfishness and carelessness kind of enhance each other, enhancing the overall score. Because nobody was ultimately really hurt. Paul doesn't cross the irredeemable line here. He gets close, but he lives to fight another day.